Hey Bat fans, Luke here, ready to Bat chat about this week's Bat book. That is Batman issue number 43, which is part 3 of the Everyone Loves Ivy storyline. And I'll preface this video by saying I was very close to not wanting to really review this issue and kind of reserve my thoughts about it as part of the comprehensive Everyone Loves Ivy storyline review, either kind of going back and rereading issues 41, 42, and 43, or waiting for it to come out in one of the trade formats. Simply because as it stands right now, I am not really too sure where I kind of stand on this story. Tom King, again, he's a good writer, and I really do, I mean this when I say this, I like this Batman run. I really do enjoy it. But this particular story arc, for just some reason, it just kind of rubbing me the wrong way, and I don't want to have this be like a negative review, but everything I kind of really, how things kind of didn't sit with me is in a good way in this story arc, all kind of gets captured either directly or indirectly in this issue. But I will say, without going any further, one thing you cannot argue is the art in this issue by Miguel Yanin is just, it's awe-inspiringly beautiful. If that's one positive you can walk away with this issue. I even like his Harley. His Harley is really well done. But yeah, it's one thing you can't argue, and I think it kind of goes without saying as you're kind of going through his art, whether it be in various, different stories you've seen throughout time, this and Grayson and Justice League Dark, and I can't remember if he did anything else. I think he did some Earth 2 as well. May or may not be totally accurate on that part, but he's just on fire with his art lately, and it's just, everything about it is just good again. He can take the simplest things and really just bring it to life. I mean, this is one thing I loved it where Ivy's sitting there kind of like a fly trap. There's a fly that goes right by Ivy, and Ivy picks it up and eats it. And it's just something so simple, but just the way Yanin that executes it, it's just really just pops off. And again, I like his Harley. I would love to have him on Harley. Unfortunately for Harley to work, he couldn't keep this up on a consistent pace anyway, bi-weekly, with Harley. Cause I think for him to fit, it's got to be long term, and the way it kind of works out now on Batman's lucky enough to have a whole kind of stable of really talented artists, so they can kind of cycle through from time to time. But Harley, I'm not too sure. So this one, for him to be on, it would just probably have to go monthly, but it would be so worth it. That said, would his talents be best suited for strictly Harley or something bigger? Probably not. Probably doesn't want to settle just for Harley. But either way, his Harley was just great. And everything about it, again, it's just awe-inspiringly beautiful. Even though in concept I really didn't dig how this worked, because I'm sorry, you land 1 foot on a car from a roof, even though you're tumbling while holding somebody. I'm sorry, you're breaking a knee. I'm sorry. Batman or not, that's not how it works. But either way, again, just the art throughout, it's just beautiful. And that's, tell you what, that's another one I'm waiting for. Tony S. Daniels' short little story arc on Batman. Oh, I'm really pumped for that one. But again, it's just, you can't argue what Yanin brings to this title. It's just been great. So that, for one, kind of continues. And even on the cover is great. I like it. The variant by Coipel, also grabbed that one up. To be honest, I'd give the nod to Yanin on this one. It's good. The story, though, again, I don't want to sound too negative, because again, I think at some point I am going to revisit this. I'll probably let it stew and simmer for the couple months it's going to be until this comes out in a trade format. And I'll kind of revisit it. Being that it's only 3 issues, would be part of another story. But I definitely want to revisit, because as right now, I don't know if it between trying to see really what was the real intent behind this, or is there more that's going to come out of it? I'm not sure, because again, the story just I don't know. Relatively simple story in its execution, though. When it comes down to it, it's basically a two-prong effect. You got Batman trying to get to Ivy through Harley, and then you got Catwoman trying to get to Harley directly. And basically what's happening throughout this issue, which Tom King does masterfully well, is that he weaves the two conversations simultaneously in a way that you would think it's one conversation. So I give Tom King credit for that in this issue, that he masterfully weaves the dialogue throughout. And there's one part in dialogue in particular I'll kind of talk about when we get to it. But I will give him that. This initial conversation between Catwoman and Ivy and Batman and quote-unquote Harley, even though it's an Ivy initially. It's done really well. Again, it's like it's happening simultaneously. And basically what's happened is that Batman's trying to get through Harley, even though she's under the mind control, or she's being spoken through the moniker of Poison Ivy. I don't know if I really explained that too well. But he's basically trying to say, hey, lose the grip that Ivy has on Harley, so Harley can kind of get to Ivy in a way that you kind of talk her off the ledge, in lack of a better term, as of right now. Because we all know, if you haven't been kind of keeping up with the current continuity, Harley and Ivy are extremely close, to the point that they're sort of inferred to be in somewhat of a relationship. It's kind of touched on, maybe more directly in some stories than others, but it's kind of hard to tell if it's platonic or whatnot, but there's a relationship there. So that's where Batman sees the weakness he can kind of go after. And he does go through Harley, try to, again, lose the mind control that Ivy has on Harley, to get to Harley, to get to Ivy, I'm sorry, to kind of, again, talk her off the ledge right now, because she's still kind of recounting the fact that she did some wrong back in the war, jokes and riddles, killed 5 people, and it's really bothering her, and she's trying to atone through it and be good, but in doing so, she's not really doing, the best kind of way at it. Simultaneously, again, Catwoman's trying to appeal to Ivy's senses as well. But we do find out it's a ruse, is that Catwoman is actually trying to distract distract Ivy enough to where she actually kind of knocks her out. Gives Batman about 15 seconds to get to Harley, and so that she can obviously be used to, again, kind of cool off Ivy. And that exactly does happen. And we see at the very end of it, that in the event that's happening, Ivy does Harley kind of cools off Ivy. That is really like a tongue twister right now. Does do that, and eventually what we see is that, again, she's really stuck on this thing where her partner that she played during the War of Jokes and Riddles, that's obviously Ivy, and Harley, she does a really good job. I like how that's kind of depicted here, hand in hand with Yan Nean's art and Tom King's storytelling, that you see Ivy really to a point that she's really at a psychological low. And I like how Harley's kind of brought in here, is that obviously the close tie between Harley and Ivy through their relationship, but also Harley as the psychologist, kind of, and maybe it's just indirectly, and me just seeing it and it's kind of put 2 and 2 together. I thought that was masterfully done. That's a logical choice. A psychologist trying to help someone who's kind of grieving through a tough mental time right now. But also, you couple that in with the relationship factor, it just totally made sense now that you look at it. Or initially I was kind of maybe hesitant to think that maybe that was the best decision to do last issue. Now I kind of look at it in hindsight, yeah, it's a perfect decision to bring Harley in the fold into this particular story to facilitate this type of angle that they're going throughout the thread of this story. And also what we find out is that initially all is not what it appears. And this is kind of one of the things I was kind of worried about. As I mean, it's executed well to a degree, but well, we see that again. Harley Ivy's big thing right now. She's concerned that she killed 5 people during the war. Jokes and riddles. She lied with Riddler, and in doing so, did things she's obviously now not proud of at all. But we find out this Batman basically comes up and explains to her that, hey, you didn't end up killing those 5 people. It was the Riddler. And this is what I'm saying. I like how this was kind of executed, but at the same time, made me kind of scratch my head a little bit. Basically, we find out again, it was the one that the Riddler was the one that killed those 5 individuals. And the way it's kind of told in 2 fronts. You got Batman, through his narration, explaining to Ivy how those 5 people were killed, and it was obviously the Riddler and not her. And at the same time, the Riddler's telling a joke. And the way you kind of have to read this, again, this is good innovation, and I kind of like how the storytelling is done, because initially you read it, you're just kind of, especially the Riddler's dialogue, you're like, this really doesn't make sense, but it hits you like, oh, wait a minute, you got to read in reverse order. That's basically what happens. You read Batman's dialogue just like you would as you're reading the page, but Riddler's dialogue you have to read kind of backwards. And I like the riddle that he kind of came up with initially, sort of, how while he's, it kind of reminded me of if you watch Pulp Fiction, oh god, what's Samuel Jackson's character's name of that? Oh, total brain fart right now. But it's kind of like that, the thing he says, Ezekiel 25:17, the path of the righteous man, blah, blah, blah. I just kind of felt that type of dialogue being told as, the Riddler's getting ready to shoot the crime members right there. It was, again, I like how it was executed. However, how it was integrated into the story really bothered me, because it really came out of the blue. Again, as Ivy's sitting there complaining about what she's done and how she has to atone to it, and it's something she's not proud of at all, and just Batman just comes out of the blue like, hey, wait a minute, you didn't do that. And it's like, wait a second, we couldn't have, this, what? It just came out of the blue, no development into that at all. And it was just interjected. It just felt like such a plot device to kind of clean the slate for Ivy, and it just really stuck out. So while I love how this was executed, how it was integrated, not a fan at all, to be perfectly honest. And basically the story wraps up. Again, Ivy now really upset at what she found out, that, initially she had all this guilt for the action she's done, and then ultimately what comes down to it is, hey, the Riddler lied to me. And that's kind of how it wraps up, to be honest. And then Ivy gets put into the Sanctuary, I guess, by Superman. We'll find out more about, I guess, maybe what the Sanctuary is later on down the road at some point. But, yeah, that's basically it. So, all in all, again, I don't know. So whatever grade I give this, I'm still haven't given. I'm kind of wait till this video, end this video, because I'm still kind of going back and forth about it. This definitely deserves another read, because there's, I don't know if there's meant to be more, if stuff's going to be revisited, because there's some huge kind of plot points kind of hanging out there. Not really plot points, but there's some things that just, things were not wrapped up very well. And I'll kind of talk about it, again, this story comprehensively. First thing is, the thing that probably bothers me the most is that there's actually 2. The 2 things. First off, Ivy had the control of everybody through the digestion of vegetables. Everyone's mind. She had complete control of it, and the people were really just a body that was being executed through the mental processing and communication, talking of poison ivy. Everyone in the world, she had that. That is something that is very dangerous, which Batman can't forget about this. Bruce, anyone in the Justice League cannot forget what Ivy did here, because now she's a major threat, because she's capable of doing that on just a whim of her being, really disappointed and depressed about what she's done, where she believes she killed 5 people. And obviously that's a traumatic thing to kind of recant when you're actually considering the guilt and obviously the pain that she might have caused those people and others and their families, whatnot. But that is a huge thing that's kind of floating now, where you kind of have to watch what powers you give certain people. Because again, you'll just sit there, and we'll be sitting there maybe a year from now, or I'll be reading Harley Quinn, like right now, maybe like the next issue pop up, and then Ivy will show up, and they'll be put in some kind of death trap or whatever, and I'll be like, wait a second, Ivy, why don't you just mentally take control of everyone here as they're getting ready to do you harm? They took vegetables, used the vegetables that they digested to speak through the green to kind of take care of everything. That is something that's kind of, again, that's huge, and that can't be forgotten. So I don't know. I'm a little worried how that's going to affect future stories with Ivy, because I just don't get it. Also, kind of building on that, she killed Batman and brought him back to life. Let's also not forget about that. So she's been given two big time powers through this story arc that simply can't be forgotten. And that's always, I'm sorry, from here on in, that's going to be in the back of my mind as I'm reading future Ivy issues, which that's troubling, because, I mean, I like Harley, but that's too much. That is way too much power for one person to have and not be kind of taken into consideration when you consider future plot lines. So there's that. Also, another thing, they reference this boy in this last issue that basically was immune or allergic to vegetables, and I inferred that that boy's going to be used to kind of have a cure to this mind control that Ivy had with everyone across the world, and that part was pretty much just left hanging out there. So I don't know why the whole point of bringing that little kid into the story, other than to say that's why Batman and Catwoman are kind of chasing around town right now with Ivy indirectly in tow through Superman and whatnot. I just, that's a huge plot point, kind of left hanging. I don't know. What else? Again, that the explanation, and I gotta go back to the war jokes and riddles again, because I just don't think there was any connection that we're looking at the pages that led me to believe that Riddler was the person that killed those crime members in the park. I remember the scene vividly, and I like how Tom King brought that back and kind of connected the dots a little bit, kind of serves as a chain to kind of push that story along. I just don't remember being any clues whatsoever that Riddler was the person who did that. So that kind of, again, it was like clear out of the blue, and it was like, what? Huh? And I guess kind of another thing, I just don't know where this all kind of fits into this whole theme, because I actually had a nice theme. Again, I kind of used the example a couple videos ago about how, the story with Batman and Superman, and then Batman and Wonder Woman kind of like being like a mini case study of their relationship with each other, and how Batman moving forward and to marry Selina might affect that relationship positively, negatively, whatnot. So I kind of used that as the road to road home, Bruce Wayne, the road home, where we kind of had as Batman's coming back, the members of the Bat family, directly, indirectly, how they're dealing with the loss of Bruce, and how they're coping and whatnot. And it's just, I thought they were going with that, and it would be nice to kind of continue that throughout to the wedding, but this one kind of broke that kind of pattern a little bit, and I just don't know really where we go from here again. So this one, the art beautiful. I like how Tom King weaved the dialogue throughout in the story, and again, I like that part with the Riddler, how we had basically two conversations, one going in real time, one going backwards, but just the explanation and how that was integrated just really seemed off. But again, a positive, a negative, again, I don't know, because I think this one, I have to read this again straight through, or either again going through the single issues, but I kind of want to wait to the trade again, that way, because it's going to be published later on down the road. Let this one simmer, because I don't know. I'm going to give this a 2.5 again, average. Again, the art kind of saving it again. It could have been a little bit less. And again, this isn't like I'm just reading. I'm It's not that I'm disliking reading the Batman title, especially through this story arc. I'm not. I'll be honest, I was engrossed. I was really enjoying the read, but that said, there are things that just kind of stuck out in my head and just really kind of hampered the reading experience a little bit. So, while I give it a 2.5 out of 5 average read, I still had fun, but some of the, again, I don't know if I want to say flaws in, because I got to read it again, but certain things just stood out that just seemed odd. It just really, again, kind of hampered the reading experience a little bit. So, anyway, Batman 43, 2.5 out of 5 average. Hit me up in the comments below. You can bat chat. Again, some of these things, if I'm just way off, hit me up and let me know, because I can kind of, when I read this again later on down the road, I can kind of keep your perspective in my mind as I'm kind of reading it, because I'd want to like this a little bit more, but again, some of the things, I don't know. The whole thing with Ivy and her powers, that really bothers me, because again, this can't be ignored, it can't be forgotten. She basically had the power of a god, and if it's not going to be used or kind of taken into consideration in future story arcs, it's just going to just seem like this was just a cheap ploy. But we'll see. We'll see. Anyway, that's it for this video. Probably won't be another video this week, but so we'll hit up next week with Detective Comics. So until then, take care.